Live on Movie TV from Zambia's capital city, Lusaka. My name is Innocent Piri. And of course, you can simply call me IP. Today happens to be the 20th of June in the year 2021. Now, we continue, of course, submitting the legacy of our icon, Zambian icon, the man that has been described in so many ways. Others call him as a man with a big heart. Others say he's a person that was a father of Zambia as well as the African continent. And of course, we have seen other messages of condolences coming from across the globe. So we continue finding out who was this person, who was KK really. And we want to hear as well from you, the viewers, because by the end of the day, you make this program a success. So this evening, we've decided on your behalf to summon who Emmanuel Mwamba, who happens to be Zambia's ambassador to Ethiopia and also permanent secretary to the African Union, which was formerly known as Organization of African Union, OAU. Let's inquire from him and how he felt on the very day when he was informed that a man with a big heart or a man with a white handkerchief had died. And he's sitting in Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, where, of course, the African Union headquarters are sitting. Let's ensure that we have more from Mr. Emmanuel Mwamba, His Excellence. But before that, again, sad to mention that we've also received a sad news just a few hours ago that our own Justice, Chief Justice Irene Mambilima has also passed on. A very, very sad news indeed, and indeed, meaning that our flag will continue flying at half-mast as well. So let me just introduce my guest as I feel so heartbroken, but let's move on with the program. Your Excellency, welcome to the program.
No, thank you very much. And my deepest condolences to the family of the Chief Justice, our Chief Justice Irene Chiro Mambilima. I've also just learned with deep sadness through the announcement by His Excellency the President Edgar Chagwalungu, that we've lost our Chief Justice. She was on official duties in Egypt. She had traveled, I think, on Monday, and she fell ill whilst on duty in Egypt. This is a very sad development in light of the mourning that the country is already under after the great loss of our founding president, our patriarch, our father figure, father of the nation, Dr. Kenneth David Buchizia Kaunda.
Right. I've been giving respect as well to the souls of Irene Mambilima as well as Dr. Kenneth Kaunda. We may just pause for a minute as a moment of silence. I think they deserve that. Live on Movie TV from Zambia's capital city, Lusaka. Your Excellence, welcome back again to Movie Television, which is more like your home, and we thought of taking advantage of your presence in Zambia. Just share with the people of Zambia how you felt the very day when you were informed that Dr. Kaunda had passed on. What came in your mind?
Well, first of all, I remember that on Africa Freedom Day, May 25, on May 25th, the entire Africa honored Dr. Kaunda with a special award, and it was done significantly on what we call Africa Day. In Zambia, we call it Africa Freedom Day. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the ceremony was done virtually. But a formal arrangement for us to receive Dr. Kaunda's award was made. And we received his award last week, and I have traveled to bring that award. Special arrangements were being made that this special award by Africa to Dr. Kaunda be given to him by His Excellency the President Edgar Chagwa Lungu. And it's during this period that then we have lost Dr. Kaunda. I have been assured with gratitude that Dr. Kaunda was aware about this award when it was given. The family mentioned to him, and I think government officials also mentioned to him. So we are glad that although he has passed on, he knows wherever the Lord has kept him, that Africa recognized his efforts and that his gallantry was not in vain.
Right. That's interesting. And just to remind us in terms of what was that award all about, I know that the theme was preaching much about, keeping in touch with our culture, and also knowing our identities as African, as Zambians, as well as the African, family members as well. What was so significant about that theme you had?
Yeah, this year, last year, our theme for Africa was silencing the guns.
Yeah.
Because we want the guns to be silent in Africa for development to take place. We have what is called the Agenda 2063 that has promulgated an Africa we want by 2063. And among them, we have about 13 flagship projects.
Right.
So we have issues of peace and security, which we have largely achieved, but we want those guns silent, whether it's in Eastern Congo, whether it's in Mali, whether it's in Chad, whether it's in Somalia. Wherever the guns are blazing, we want them silent, and that was our theme for 2020. And this year, we are celebrating heritage and culture, and how these can be levers of development. And it's in that light that Africa decided to recognize Dr. Kaunda for his immense contribution to the liberation of Southern Africa, to the liberation of Africa.
You were sitting in Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, of course, where the headquarters of the African Union sitting as well. And we've been told that KK was among those prominent figures that sought to establish this organization. I remember in your speech, you went further to highlight that he was actually the last surviving, founding member of the AU as well. What was the aim of establishing the African Union, formerly known as the Organization of African Union, by KK among other leaders that have gone as well?
So, the three heads of states and leaders met in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, in 1963.
Yeah.
Dr. Kaunda then was in transition. He was a cabinet minister, I think a cabinet minister of local government at the time. Elections had taken place. UNIP had emerged, one of the major parties, and the coalition government was formed in 1963, and Dr. Kaunda was a cabinet minister of local government. He, however, traveled for the cause of the African Union, Organization of African Unity at the time. And the three heads of states and the three leaders involved amongst some of the most prominent ones, such as Jomo Kenyatta in Kenya, Bembela from Algeria, Leopold Senghor from Senegal, from Ghana. All these leaders, Kwame Nkrumah from Ghana, had come together, the famous 33, and said, for Africa to develop, looking at its immense wealth, looking at its fractured past, what it had suffered from slavery to colonialism, to forge an Africa that they thought would usher in development for its people, they decided to come together. And that was the organization that was formed. And Dr. Kaunda was among the 33. And the 33 have since all passed on. And Dr. Kaunda was the last man standing. And as Zambia, we are truly, truly privileged that we lived with a legend amongst us, that a man of history, a man that symbolized a special era in Africa. And he was right with us, right in Zambia, in Lusaka. You could meet him anywhere. And other than his health the last 2-3 years, he was everywhere conducting his activities. And sometimes we forgot how important he was to Africa and to the rest of the world.
Wow. There are a lot of young people that are watching this program maybe for the first time, more especially now that KK is gone. A lot of young people, they would want to really understand, they want to learn from this, because, you know, there's that, this cliche where we've been told that Zambians were less in terms of, you know, reading our history. You know, they would want to learn from you in terms of, we know that one of the main reasons why our former freedom fighters in Africa sat in Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, under the AU umbrella, was to ensure that they consolidate their efforts to ensure that all the African countries become independent. You know, and one would want to find out, say, how much has been achieved, let's say from the time this organization was established until where we are today. Why was that AU so important? What fruits has it bared?
For young people, first of all, there's something we need to do. Let's give them our history. Let's teach them our history through the platforms they consume. So if it's digital media, let us do that. Well, the old ways might not work, and we need to update our methods. But we need to get them engaged in political and civic matters of our country. But the story of Dr. Kaunda is a special story, because it's a story of two ordinary boys from Chinsali, Simon Mwansaka Pwepwe and Kenneth David Kaunda.
Was his vice president at some point?
Yeah,
Simon Mwansaka.
Rising from mission schools. Chinsali was privileged. There are 3 major churches there that conducted mission churches, the White Fathers, the Catholics, you know, the Church of Scotland, where Dr. Kaunda's parents came from, and you know, they were reverends. And there were 3 major churches there. But they are these 2 ordinary boys that came from, and they were teachers, and came to the Copper Belt. The Copper Belt was the economic hub of our country. And they began to participate in political and civic activities. They were so self-aware that we're not independent, and that we needed to live better, not under the colonial shackles that we were under. And you can trace their involvement in politics from 1948 with Mbikusta Godwin Lewanika, with Katilungu, Lawrence Katilungu, who formed the first trade unions. And by 1953, Kenneth Kaunda was Secretary General of the African National Congress, and his leader was Hari Mwanga Nkumbula. And they were very young. This is 1953, and he's already a Secretary General. By 1957, the impatience of young people, they thought, you know, the senior leaders like Hari Mwanga Nkumbula were a bit slow, were a bit accepting to the ways of the white people. And being young, they were more radical. And they broke away and formed Zambia Africa National Congress. You see Zambia beginning to appear for the first time, you know, and the colonial authorities immediately recognized how militant that organization was. And they were aware of what was happening across Africa, and they immediately banned Zang, and they threw Kaunda in prison. But they had followers. Mainza Chona proceeded to form UNIP while Kaunda and Kapwepwe were in prison. And when KK and Kapwepwe came out in 1959, they were immediately made leaders, and our march to independence was determined. It didn't matter what our colonial authorities thought and decided. We were helped somehow by a relaxed approach by a conservative prime minister from Britain, who gave the famous speech in Cape Town, The Wind of Change. And he said, we have to give the colonial authorities back to its people. And Malawi was first in our region to become independent, and Tanzania 1961, and we followed and Botswana in 1966, Zambia 1964. But because of the huge number of white settlers in South Africa, in Namibia, in Zimbabwe, these refused to give up. They said, we can't give you independence on a mere speech from a prime minister from Britain. We can't. And when we became independent, you can clearly see the leadership of Dr. Kaunda. And when UDI in Southern Rhodesia, Ian Smith, refused to accede to the demands of his people and give them independence, we took the matter to the United Nations, and there were sanctions by both Commonwealth and the UN that were placed on Zimbabwe, Southern Rhodesia at the time. We were a young country. We were just 1 year old as a country, and our exports and imports were coming through Lobito Bay, through Benguela rail line, through Durban, through Beira Port, but all these had to pass through Salisbury, Southern Rhodesia. And remember, on our left, Angola was under Lusophone. The Portuguese were still in charge. It was under colonial authorities. Mozambique was under colonial authorities. And the two with the white colonialists agreed and shut us out.
Right.
We had nowhere to export our copper, to import our oil, to import or export any of the things. Dr. Kaunda did not back down. And for almost 10 years, we suffered. For the first 2 years, we were airlifting our copper exports through Nairobi, Kenya. We were importing oil. Imagine bringing fuel by air. Until we had to open a ragtag road called the Hell Run. You must have learned about it up to Dar es Salaam. But anyway, the fruits of all those is that we got along with the Chinese, and they gave us the Tanzania-Zambia Railway Authority, the Uhuru Railway, because that's what it was. It brought us economic independence. For the first time, we could now export without going through Zimbabwe, our imports and exports.
You've just touched something
for our oil.
Very important. Yesterday, I did host President Haivu Hamudud from the part of National Unity Progress, in which he did also touch a little bit regarding the importance of the Chinese government and how much contribution they did to the attainment of independence of Zambia. You know, regardless of what is being talked about today in terms of the Chinese, government being demonized by a lot of people. You know, Hamdud was on firm ground yesterday to say it's only those people that don't understand their history, where they're coming from, that would demonize the Republic of China. You know, but I want to take you back again to KK and, the AU, organization which you are representing today, because you are enjoying the fruits of this, legend who was gone today, KK. And I remember that when Zambia got independence, one of his messages was that we can't go to sleep as Zambians because most of our neighboring countries are still being controlled by the British government. So we need to come together and fight this animal called the colonial masters. And true to his message again, it was similar to that of Kwame Nkrumah as well of Ghana, in which in one of his speeches said, if Ghana cannot be independent, if other African countries are not independent. So meaning that Ghana's independence meant nothing at that moment, not until all the African countries became independent. So you can see that their message as well was almost correlating, that of KK as well as of Kwame Nkrumah as well. But I want to take you back again. When you come from the AU, what message really, what is the organization saying about KK? What have they lost?
Okay,
at
thank
this
you.
moment?
Innocent, you have a mouthful of questions.
Yeah.
First, let me go to the Chinese. Clearly, they played a key role in the life of our country. At a time when we began Tazara as a project, China was not the mighty it is. It was regarded as a third world country, one of the poorest countries at the time. They did the Tazara project. It was one of the biggest projects in Africa, single project in Africa. It has remained, other than the New Belt Initiative Road, the largest single China aid to any country. That's how significant the Tazara project was. It cost $400 million at the time. And it brought over 60,000 Chinese engineers, technicians and craftsmen and laborers. In fact, the period they were building the Tazara, they suspended the construction of any rail project because all their significant engineers at the time were committed to the Tazara. So until we tell our history, we will keep on making shallow opinions. But the Chinese were with this country at a very difficult time of its life. Right. And they helped us. Both the Tanzania-Zambia Mafuta project called Tazama, the oil pipeline, was also constructed. Coming to our forefathers, Kwame Nkrumah, Leopold Senghor, and Jomo Kenyatta, and Julius Mwalimu Nyerere, they were largely influenced, by the philosophy of, for example, Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King in the U.S., and they were very determined that we should be a free people. And they copied the methods, and some institutionalized them using our own means. And an injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere. And that if any of our lands in Africa is not independent, we are not independent. And for Dr. Kaunda, he was driven by his famous philosophies: love your neighbor as you love yourself, love your God with all your strength, with all your might. You know how he said those two scriptures every time he began with them and he ended them. So it was an innate belief that my neighbor, I should love them as much as I love myself. And I think it was an arduous, very difficult journey. For the African Union, the embassy began a project to ensure that Dr. Kaunda is honored, and as soon as I arrived in 2019 in Ethiopia, in Addis Ababa, there was a first recognition of Dr. Kaunda on Africa Day again in 2019. In 2020, our embassy in Ethiopia initiated the project to have Dr. Kaunda honored as a Nobel Peace Prize winner, because we think that he brought peace to Southern Africa and to Africa. And we were so successful that Dr. Kaunda has died as a Nobel Peace Laureate nominee because he was nominated. And the nomination, among thousands that were submitted, were accepted, and he was listed among those that were being considered. Of course, he didn't win in 2020, but we tried.
Are we likely to pick it up, looking at this barometer that has been set by KK, as young generation that are coming now, and also you that are already, in power today? Are you likely to pick it up from there and proceed, or do much more than what maybe KK might have done? Or maybe, do we see ourselves again going backwards again?
No, we are doing it. Let's start with KK in 1964. He took over this country, and this country had only one trunk road. And we only had 109 university graduates. He really started building this nation ground up. He built universities. Today, we even have unemployed doctors because of the foundation that we started, where we had such a critical shortage of doctors. But now we can even have excess doctors. We have all manners of profession that have benefited and are across the world, graduates from, the initiatives of Dr. Kaunda and his fellow leaders. We have infrastructure across the country. Subsequent presidents have followed up on the ideals of this, of the first leadership and the foundation that was made by Dr. Kaunda. Dr. Chilwa came, he improved on issues of democracy, human rights, and, liberalized the country. Each president has had unique contribution to this country we call Zambia. One of the key issues, for example, His Excellency, the President Edgar Chagwa Lungu, has done. He continued on the issue of infrastructure. We have major roads across every, to districts, provinces, and to our borders, our 8 major borders. And we have hospitals, health centers, schools, ports. We have everything. This is a vision as viewed by Dr. Kaunda and his colleagues in 1964. And there's something I like about what President Edgar Lungu has done in relation to honoring our former presidents. Right. Because you must have noticed that as Zambians, we are quick to point out at the weaknesses of people and rarely build the strength of our leaders. It is for this reason that, for example, Dr. Kaunda was highly revered across Africa. And here you do not see the kind of reverence that Dr. Kaunda, for example, enjoyed in South Africa or in Ethiopia or in Ghana. So it's a lesson, and the journey has begun. President Edgar Lungu has ensured that our founder presidents and other former leaders must be respected. Let's look not more on their weaknesses, but on their strength. If we don't build our own heroes, who will? Right. If we don't tell our own stories, who will? A bad story will be told about you.
Right. There are a lot of beliefs out there, Your Excellence. Others still believe that despite the existence of the AU, which we have today, a lot of our leaders in Africa, they are disorganized, for lack of better words, or disunited, if I was to be diplomatic.
No, we have to give
this organization
we have to give them credit. Out of 55 African states, you can count just on your hand where we have wars. We have little. The peace and security architecture of Africa has been achieved. Africa is at peace, other than the pockets, here and there. So our leaders have done very well. They've embraced democracy, they've embraced human rights. Africa is a diverse continent, and it has diverse peoples and cultures. And to put together as a nation, from a nation handed over to you by a conference in Berlin that occurred in 1884, someone drew those straight lines. They didn't care where you lived. They separated families, separated peoples, separated cultures, separated tribes. Africa is a very difficult place as we found it. But our leaders respected the borders and said, we'll make nations out of them. And, in future, maybe we can have a confederate state of Africa where all these nations come together under one banner. But it's a vision we have to walk.
One Pan-Africanist, Professor Lumumba from Kenya, in one of the speeches, he said that if you look at most of these organizations that are existing, they're just there to maybe to cause more confusion. They are defunct organizations because they are bringing nothing to our continent apart from much of the confusion. And one of the reasons for me, or his submission, justification, is saying, why are we failing to stand on our own up to now? Zambia is 57 years of age today. You can name other countries, but we are still depending on the foreign aid. The people that we thought at that moment to say these people were not important at that moment, they are the people again we continue depending on, to feed us. Where are we failing to agree as, our leaders? Where are they failing to agree?
Africa's enemies, other than poverty, unemployment, diseases, Africa's enemies are also outside its borders, outside this continent. Africa is the wealthiest continent in the world. Africa has all the natural resources that has to build the world. So the people out there who are far developed than we are and want our national resources, they will first of all exclude us. We are not part of the G20, but the G20 rely on our wealth. We are not part of the G7, but the G7 rely on the wealth that we have. So they've enforced these exclusionary tactics. We are at the United Nations, but we are not among the 5 permanent members. We don't have a power of veto. We don't even have a representative among those 5. So you are dealing with an international infrastructure determined to divide and rule over us. And other than if our leaders have to be awoke, they have to be alert, and these are the efforts we've been doing at the African Union to ensure that we move with determination. I just told you about Agenda 2063, where we have said we want a prosperous Africa by 2063. We want, as the generation passes, the Kaunda generation and the new generation takes over, we want to hand over and bequeath to our children a very successful, prosperous, peaceful, integrated Africa.
And the Agenda 2063, I mean, these were, you know, the agenda of 2010, somewhere there. They were called, is it the 7th Millennium Development Goals, which have now been transformed into Agenda 2063.
No.
You know,
let me clarify that.
Yeah.
First of all, we have United Nations goals.
Yeah.
Okay. And what you're talking about were United Nations goals. They were a 15-year program from the year 2000 to 2015. Now we have what we are calling SDGs. These are developmental goals crafted from the United Nations and from the premise of the United Nations and from the priorities of the United Nations. The United Nations is a global intergovernmental institution that encompasses everyone else. But for Africa, we have crafted what is called the Agenda 2063, the Africa we want.
All right. In moving on, Your Excellency, I want to just also to get into your mind when you sit at home and you begin to introspect about KK and what he did to this country. Besides his contribution to the country, what is it that he did personally to you as an individual?
First of all, let's recount what he has done, why he is being mourned in this fashion, why Zambia has given him 21 days of national mourning. The law says for former presidents is 7 days. He's been given 21 days. Why Zimbabwe has given him 14 days of national mourning? He's a foreign former head of state. Why Namibia has given him 10 days? Why Botswana has given him 7 days of national mourning?
And I heard
why South Africa?
It was too much. 21
why
days
South
was
Africa?
Too much,
No, it is not. It is not. Why South Africa has given him 10 days? Why Malawi has given him 10 days? It symbolizes, you know, the sense of humanity we all wish to be. He sacrificed not just his country. Even it must have taken a toll even on his personal life, because we hosted MPLA and UNITA of Angola. They were working together at the time. We hosted Frelimo from Mozambique. We hosted ZANU and ZAPU. ZANU was, headed later by Robert Mugabe, but before that, there was another gentleman, Ndabaninga Stole was the president before Robert Mugabe took over. ZAP was headed by Nkoma, Joshua Nkomo. We hosted SWAPO here. We hosted the ANC. They had their headquarters in Zambia for 30 years. What does that mean, hosting them? They came in large groups. They even had military wings to conduct and wage wars in the countries they came from. We facilitated at great cost those things. We educated their people. We provided our education and health infrastructure for them. They lived in our communities, and the sacrifice was immense. Here, various people from various countries, right within our communities. It had to take a great leader to harmonize all those people, you know. And it was a sacrifice, because it didn't mean Zambia was rich. No, Zambia was not rich. And it didn't mean that we could afford to wage the wars and keep the people we were keeping. No. And remember, after both Angola and Mozambique became independent, for Mozambique, Frelimo and Renamo went to war. There was a civil war there. And in Angola, UNITA and MPLA went to war. There was a civil war. And there were thousands of people that were displaced from their communities, and they came into our land. Now we are after hosting the liberation movements, we had to host the refugees from the war, and never to speak on the difficult challenges DRC faces and how many times we've hosted those communities into our country. It had to take a great leader to make some of those hardest decisions. The interest of your country and the interest of the region, because Dr. Kaunda was a Pan-Africanist, pure Pan-Africanist. He looked at the interest of others as his own interest. And he shared the little we had with these communities. That is why by 1990, all this had taken a burden and toll on this country. We are highly indebted. Our economy was collapsing. The West were trying very hard to undermine Dr. Kaunda and his leadership, because remember, he was chair of the frontline states. So he was a spearhead. That's why you see those pictures of him sitting with George Bush, with Ronald Reagan, with Nixon, because of the senior position he held with Julius Nyerere, among them as frontline states. So they tried to undermine him as much. But Zambia never went to war. Zambia never came into civil conflict. In fact, his local policies were so good, the One Zambia, One Nation policy. We have 73 tribes, ethnic groupings, and he united all of us. And all of us felt as Zambians. It is for that reason that we are celebrating this man. He is not an ordinary mortal, but the qualities his leadership displayed over the years. Did he have weaknesses? Of course he's human. He had his weaknesses. Did he act authoritarian? Sometimes, because the times he lived in required that he acted authoritarian, or he was going to lose power. Because we know how African leaders were being undermined, especially by the West. The National Archives have since been unearthed, in Belgium, in France, and in the US. We know how Patrice Lumumba died. We know how other leaders died. So you cannot, you ought to understand why Dr. Kaunda acted in the manner he did. So he's a hero, a legend, a pure Pan-Africanist, a leader, a rare leader who remained human with a humble humility, extreme humble humility, and it was never about him. It was always about the country.
I know there's a lot that would want to offload about, KK, but let's get into the issue of a unit that you've talked about. You've mentioned that KK was a peace preacher. He's a person that wanted to see all of us in Zambia getting united. At some point in 1973, he went to the extent of abolishing other political parties that existed because of the confusion that existed. For him, he believed that if people belonged to one political party, I think that unit was going to be achieved. And that's something that you've mentioned, that sometimes one can act aggressively at a particular moment to achieve a certain goal. And that was one of the graciousness that we saw from KK as well. But as we sit today in Zambia, as well as, let's talk about back home in Zambia, because KK is ours, was ours. Would you say that as a country, we are united where we are today? So, with all this seemingly tension we have seen, more especially this time around when we are having the election on August 12th, there's too much, if I would say, confusion from our politicians mostly. Where are we heading to?
Across the world.
What should they learn from KK?
Across the world, there's the rise of identity politics. People belonging, feeling excluded and belonging, feeling excluded and therefore forging alliances. You've seen the rise of identity politics in the US under the previous president, Donald Trump. In Africa, we've seen the rise of tribal and ethnic politics. We've seen regional politics emerging, where whatever tribe you belong to, then your tribesmen to support you. All these arise out of feeling of exclusion, and that is why to achieve peace is a lot of hard work. Peace doesn't come on its own. Unity doesn't come on its own. You have to work for it. Dr. Kaunda made it a motto, One Zambia, One Nation, and he acted the One Zambia, One Nation motto. Over the years, we've seen the rise of identity politics and regional politics, which is regrettable looking at the work that was done by Dr. Kaunda. It becomes as a rebuke to all of us that we need to emulate the works of Dr. Kaunda. And his methods were very simple. I'll give an example. When you are a graduate, you are a young teacher, a young civil servant, and you are like you, IK from Chipata, he would send you deliberately as a policy to Western Province. If you are Lozi, he would send you deliberately as a young graduate to Eastern Province. If you are a young Tonga, he would send you to Northern Province deliberately. This was to ensure that these young people found young girls and founded young families where they are to integrate. The intermarriage was a policy. And I laugh nowadays, when I served as permanent secretary in the various regions, and I would hear one of the complaints by chiefs would say, no, kuna wanati bwere sela chabe wakui from another region. So I would remind them, no, this is a national policy. This is to forge integration. So the Bembas in Southern Province are not here by mistake, or the Tongas in Eastern Province are not here by mistake. It's part of integration. Right. And for now, you really can't say who is who. I am Emmanuel Mwamba, married to Monde Mwendawai. My children have lost names. So while you might look at me as, this particular tribe, the intermarriages have ensured that we are evenly spread. And that's why the ugly rearing in the politics of regional politics is to say the least, embarrassing. We need to look at what Dr.
But how can we dissolve that, really? It's an animal that we can't ignore. And if we are going to let it or just preach for the sake of preaching, trust me, in the next 50 years from now, we are likely to be in trouble. God forbid. How can we dissolve
Let me say, President Edgar Lungu reintroduced the motto One Zambia, One Nation, and it is read on every news item on ZNBC. My appeal is private media organizations like yours should embrace those national policies. So the president decreed that every news item on ZNBC starts with One Zambia, One Nation. We want it to be a debate. We want it ingrained in our people, in their subconscious, that this is just not a motto. This is something we should act out.
Apart from the One Zambia, One Nation motto, what else, Your Excellency, can we do to really fight this scourge of division in our country?
It's up to our voters.
I keep on emphasizing because I'm sure even in KK, as he's sleeping right now, is able to listen to us, what we're talking about. And I'm sure you witnessed some of the confusion when he was still alive. He couldn't just speak. He was just laughing at some point. I want to believe so.
Innocent wants to take me to politics. But I'll answer it this way, in this manner. I think government, for example, you've seen President Edgar Lungu has visited areas where he was not voted for. I think more than even the areas where he was voted for. He has spent huge state resources in those areas. There are national projects that have taken place in areas where he was not voted for. You've heard even other provinces say, but we are strongholds and we are not seeing the development that we are seeing in other areas. It has to be a deliberate policy. We have to speak about it, and we have to condemn the rise of tribalism. We have to condemn the rise of regional politics. We have to ensure that both in our conduct, in our action, and in everything we do, we forge a One Zambia, One Nation.
Others have, clearly stated that this issue of maybe violence, fighting one another, the disunity, the tribal, talks around the political space in Zambia can only be fought if the president himself stood up and cracked a whip. How true is that from your own understanding?
We were born a multi-party state in 1964. we had three major political parties: the UNIP, the ANC, which was the oldest party at the time, and a white freedom party, federal party. 1968, we had our first elections, and there were violent clashes in Mufulira between ANC and UNIP, and in some parts of the country. By 1973, the violence between party cadres had risen so much. It's part of the justification why we went to one-party state. I understand African heads of states found it attractive to form a single party, and Tanzania is the one that started it, and other African countries followed, and this was to prevent the occurrences of coup d'etats that were occurring across Africa, and it was identified that to unite all Africans, let us have one party, because the competitive nature of multi-party democracy, we are not so developed like in Western countries and in the US, where everyone is educated and you can compete on the market of ideas. And of course, by 1991, we condemned single-party state because of its excesses. We reverted to multi-party democracy. And that question has still arisen. Why is there a rise of political violence? Why is there bitterness and division in the country? Why should politics and national elections literally threaten the health state of the country? These are questions I have, like you have, because they are far deeper than any contest in an election. And are we going to revert to this contest every 5 years, where we threaten our own national identity, our own national peace and security? We need to have a health debate. Like I said, where we've copied this democracy, they are all educated, far relatively developed. And they compete not on violence, but on a market of ideas, who can offer a better policies for their country. Right. And it is for this reason that, for me, my appeal is to political parties, the party manifestos. They should promote those party manifestos, discuss their ideas, see the differences that are between them. That way we might mitigate and reduce issues like political violence, rhetoric that raises disunity in our country, and the conduct of politics that divide and threaten, like I said, the peace of this country.
One critical, example that KK set to this country, as well as the continent in general, was the willingness to accept defeat. Whenever there's an election, if the people of Zambia speak, you have to listen. And here's KK that was in 1991. First of all, he decided to cut short his tenure of office, and he called for early elections. When he lost again, he was very much willing to accept defeat, and he handed over power to KK, the man that you
Dr.
also...
Chiluba.
Yes, to Dr. Chiluba. Thank you so much. A man that you worked with, for a long time as a president as well. What should our leaders learn from that, both in Zambia as well as the continent? Because we have seen, the scenario where when one loses an election, it's either one from the opposition goes on the pulpit and begin to, lament, to say my votes have been rigged. It's either your votes are rigged or stolen. There's no loss in Africa. What is causing all these issues in Africa?
Like I said, we need to focus on what is important, like Dr. Kaunda did. In 1988, he wins an election, landslide victory. A year later, his legitimacy is being questioned. And ZCTU, which is Zambia Congress of Trade Union, at the time, the largest trade union in Zambia, under the leadership of Frederick Chiluba, held a congress just the following year, in 1989. And one of their major resolutions was that there should be a return to multi-party democracy. And then we saw in July 1990, Akashamba Twambiku Stalewanika, Derek Chitala and others, Mbita Chitala now, convene as, as intellectuals, convene the call for multi-party democracy and the MMD was born, and Dr. Chua subsequently, proceeded to win elections. But look at it from the perspective of Dr. Kaunda. He has just won an election in 1988, landslide victory. A year later, his legitimacy is being questioned. By 1990, the MMD has raised such a storm against his government that is forced to accept, because there was an election due in 1993. He could have said, okay, we'll conduct a referendum in 1993. We will determine whether we should go for multi-party democracy. But his ear was so much to the ground, he wanted to understand, is this a call of people or a call of just disgruntled people? And he understood this was a national call. And he acceded to that and went to an elections in 1991, 2 years earlier than he was constitutionally scheduled to. And he lost that election. And he handed over power to, Dr. Chiluba, like you stated. Again, it's a magnanimity of the man. This is not about me. This is about the country. This is about the people. Leadership, we hold it in trust of the people. It's not my leadership. It's the leadership of the people. I'm a leader because of the people. I'm not a leader in spite of the people. I'm a leader because of the people. And those are principles we need to emulate, we need to copy, and we need to support and grow.
In terms of humility, Your Excellence, again, the man we are mourning today, in the next 19 to 21 days, is a person that when he was leaving office, he didn't have a house, a personal house. What kind of demonstration and what kind of a politician can afford to do that? What more you that, today you are a representative to Ethiopia today. Maybe you've got several houses as we speak today. And he's a person that had governed the country for 27 years. He left office without a house. At some point again, he was evicted to a house in which he was accommodated. But again, he never cried foul. What lessons do you learn from this, young politicians?
Yeah, the principles were very lofty. The standards were extremely high. And to develop a country, you need to have a mindset like that. Like I said, it's never about you, it's about the country.
Yeah.
And Dr. Kaunda has shown us the way. Our role is to emulate. Our role is to ensure that it's never about us, it's about the people we lead, or we are afforded an opportunity to govern. Like I said, those leaders were patriotic, so patriotic to this country. They were selfless in nature. That's why it was never about them. They were so selfless. It's not what I can get out of the state. It's what I can contribute to the state.
Are we emulating to what KK,
I think
to the best that KK left?
I think we are, But it has to start with all of us. Many young people shun politics. They think it is for them, So we need to participate in the conduct of civic and political affairs. We need to understand
the people.
We need to understand.
Not serving yourself as a leader when you're in office. That's the aspect for me I want to elaborate more. You can even go further with children as well. Some of them, they used to come here. For example, Tilenj Kaunda, the man I'm very much closer with. He used to come here without a vehicle. If you want to invite him, he will tell you, I don't have a car. So you need to provide transport for me. We'll go and pick him and bring him here again. We'll take him back. And these are the children of late KK. Are we learning lessons from these human beings? Okay,
now that's a complex question. I don't know if we have time, but it's very clear, like I answered earlier. Leadership is never about self. It's about the country. It's about the people. And you do what the people want. And the institutions of offices you occupy at whatever level, whether you're a permanent secretary, whether you're a minister or head of state or ambassador, these offices are not about you. They're for you to serve the people that, God has afforded an opportunity for you to be in that office. But in Kulonashpu sana, around Dr. Kaunda, it was socialist-oriented. In fact, Dr. Kaunda had even a leadership code that banned all leaders, including himself, from holding any business, from in fact buying property. There was a leadership code. So, like I said, inkulonashpu sana. The liberal one, of course, the liberal democracy that we brought allowed for enterprise and for people to participate, even in government business, if they disclose interest. Did that rise the issue of corruption? Of course, corruption has been there. Maybe it did. But these are questions as a country we can interrogate when we begin to have different dispensation. This was a one-party state, and this is now a multi-party democracy. And then this was a socialist economy centered from Lusaka. And this is a liberal economy, a devolved government, you know. So there are many ways in which I can answer. But that means our leaders still have to be resolute. It's never about you, it's about the country.
I want you to attempt, within the 5 minutes we're remaining with, before we close our program, in terms of the education sector as well, under KK. Today, each guest I host on this program, they will tell you to say, I'm a beneficiary of KK's, good education policy that they had. You know, are you one of those?
Yeah, I think my primary schools was free education, but my college days you had to pay. We founded this country with 3 million people, extremely wealthy, with national reserves of 179 million pounds at the time. I don't know how much billions that is in today's money. Our copper exports were wonderful, and you know, we had boom years for many years until 1973. So we could afford free education. What should we do now? Let's grow the economy so that we can afford these services to our people, whether it's health, education, whether it's cash transfers to the infirm, whether it's pensions and benefits to the retired. We need to grow our economy so that it can afford these services for our people. Besides, government is all about the people.
What kind of a leader, Your Excellency, would you want to be, or would you want to be remembered? God forbid, but if you died today, how would you want Zambians to remember you as a leader who saved this country under the late FTJ administration and now under ECA as well? What kind of a leader do you want to be?
No, I've been very privileged. You know, as a young man, I became official spokesperson for the second president. He was in retirement at the time. I served him for 10 years. You know, I've been part of the civil service since 2002, so I'm 19 years in the civil service. I was privileged to serve as permanent secretary under the late President Michael Chulufya Sata, may his soul rest in peace, and I served in Northern, Eastern Province, Western Province, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting Services, and at Cabinet Office. I've also been privileged under His Excellency President Edgar Chagwalungu, where I served as ambassador in South Africa and now currently in Ethiopia. I've always said, I think when God creates a path for you, put God at the center. So for me, God leads me to these paths to serve Him and serve His people. Like I said earlier, for me, it's never about me. I count myself as extremely privileged to have served in this position. Under ordinary circumstances, I would not be where I am, but God has allowed it to be. How will I be remembered? I just want to serve.
Have you made your legacy? Like that of KK? Because tomorrow might not come. God forbid, once again.
No, we pray that it comes, and with God's own blessings and, you know, with His own wishes, we
What is it that you want to achieve, apart from what you have accomplished so far?
Well, I'm a writer, I'm a journalist. I wish to have so many books in the head. My own book, I have a book for Dr. Frederick Chiluba. I have a book about politics of this country. I say bits and pieces of it on my Facebook page for those that follow me. I'm a writer, and, you know, I'd like to write and hopefully that get published.
Can you speak to the Zambian people under a minute, Your Excellency, and I want to reaffirm that all you have said in the last 45 minutes, you did not lie anything. You meant your words. I want you to swear.
First of all, I think let's focus to why we are here.
Yeah.
The life of Dr. Kenneth David Buchizia Kaunda is a great life, an icon to this country, a hero that lived amongst us and a hero that we should emulate, live his ideals. Let many Kenneth Kaundas come forth. Let many Kenneth Kaundas spread in our infrastructure of politics, governance, and wherever we are.
Allow me to appreciate you once again for coming, Your Excellency. We will continue calling on you each time you are needed by the people of Zambia as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you, viewers.
Thank you so much. We end our discussion here. My guest has been His Excellency Emmanuel Mwamba, who happens to be the Zambia's ambassador to Ethiopia and also permanent representative. And also allow me to always give kudos to the delegation coming from Smart Eagles. Thank you so much for those, that wonderful streaming. And also Utunensu Nachagwa's well team is here. They were televising this program live. My name is Innocent Piri. Allow me to say, may God bless Zambia, may God bless Mother Africa. Good night.
$833-560. Kaoma, Gloria on 0971 495 793. In Mongu, Michael on 0975 864 597. In Kalabo, Litia Mwangala on 0966 229 890. Movie TV, now near you. Hello. We're going to win the fight against the coronavirus. But to do that, we need to follow these basic prevention guidelines. It is important that you wash your hands regularly for 20 seconds with soap and water or alcohol-based hand rub. Cover your nose and mouth with a disposable tissue or flexed elbow when you cough or sneeze. Avoid close contact, at least 1 meter or 3 feet, with people who are unwell. Stay home and self-isolate from others in the household if you feel unwell. Don't touch your eyes, your nose, or your mouth if your hands are not clean. Better still, maybe just don't touch your face at all. I know it could be difficult, but practice it. It's not impossible. This message is brought to you by Movie TV for the greater good of Mother Zambia.
God rise. Nkani pansi. Pana banda.
Don't banda.
Mbogoshi. Peter Banda. Mbogoshi. Your Honor, the case you're having at this moment is a property grabbing. Pana Banda valistira wa Peter Banda Simon for property grabbing. Wa Peter Banda bamleta kuno kuchiri cha milango kuchira mwalipoka FP mumaka.
Pangani Banda. Unalandira Simon kuchokera kwa Pangani Banda. Ndipo unawerenga ndikuvesesa mulandu omwe wakubweresa kuno.
Inde mbugo.
Ukuvomera kapena ukana mulandu.
Vikana mulandu mbugo.
Chilapiro off.
Chitondo nshi mwala wonfya kutila ise chamilandu chunto wino kiti mwala ndolola chinyanja Mwana kamba mwenye mwani ine Pangani Banda nilombira kwa mulungu wanga kuti umbo noneza pereka mbalo la milandu
kuti umbo naweza pereka mbalo la milandu
ozangala ona